Hi everyone, I'm Rincy and I'm one of the contributing editors over at Book Riot. So we are officially in the second half of the year, and I thought that for fun and to kind of add some excitement to my life and potentially yours, and also to have something to look forward to, I thought I would talk about my 5 most anticipated books for the second half of the year. Now, I will have to preface this by saying I'm someone who doesn't really stay on top of what books are coming out. I'm not great at it. I'm someone who very heavily relies on things like the new releases index and stuff like that, where other people are kind of curating books that are coming out. And especially now that I'm not doing Ready, Set, Hold anymore, I'm really not paying attention to books that are coming out months in advance because I don't need to. And I have plenty of other books that came out months before that I still haven't read yet. And I'm very much a backlist reader in general, or I should say a lot of my reading is backlist reading. So yeah, I don't forecast a lot in terms of oh, this book sounds really interesting, I really need to pick it up. But I do get really excited when there are books coming out from authors that I've already read, and especially with at least 3 out of the 5 of these are authors that haven't put out a book in a number of years, and so it's really exciting that they have something coming out this year. So I'm going to just run through these in the order that they are coming out, and as always with these sorts of things, with the way the world works now, these publication dates could change, but this is what's available as of this recording. So first up, I have Cased: The Origins of Our Discontent by Isabel Wilkerson, and this is supposed to come out on August 11th. Isabel Wilkerson wrote the book The Warmth of Other Suns, which is a massive but really great nonfiction book that talks about this thing called the Great Migration. And this was something that I had never heard of before I had read this book. And it was basically this period of time in U.S. history where a significant portion of the Black population migrated from the South to the North. And she talks about sort of the impacts of that part of history and how it's never talked about. And she follows 3, I believe, specific families as they move from the South to different cities. In this book, from what I can tell, Isabel Wilkerson is looking at the history of the United States through the lens of a case system, and how the United States, even though no one really talks about it or acknowledges this or anything like that, does have a case system set in place. And I'm someone who, when I see the word case, I immediately think of India because I am of Indian descent, but I'm sure plenty of other people do as well. And so she talks about how the United States that we live in today has been affected and shaped by this hidden case system. And she does compare it to countries like India, but also Nazi Germany and other places around the world. So I'm really excited for this because I think that Isabel Wilkerson is just an incredibly smart person who looks at the United States in a very interesting way, and I'm very excited to see sort of how this book views American history and potentially opens my eyes up to things about our country that I don't really think about right now. Next, I have Transcendent Kingdom by Ya Jesse, and this is coming out on September 8th. Ya Jesse wrote the incredible book Homegoing, and I recommend that book all the time. It is one of my all-time favorite books, and so I'm very excited to see what she does next. I'm trying not to have too high expectations going into this book because I feel there's no way for someone to really reach how high my expectations could potentially go, but I am hopeful that this will be a good book. So I don't know too much about the story other than it's following Ghanaian immigrants who are living in Alabama. One member of the family is attending Stanford, I believe, medical school. She's doing research in regards to depression and addiction, and this is partially inspired by her own family because her brother died of a heroin overdose after becoming addicted to Oxycontin, and her mother deals with depression and has suicidal thoughts and things along those lines. And while she's turning to science to try to find answers to some of the stuff that she's dealing with, she's also struggling to deal with her faith and what she grew up with. And so, like I said, I'm really, really excited for this, trying to maintain my expectations or keep them relatively realistic. But this is a book that I pre-ordered, and I very rarely pre-order books, but this is one that I know I want as soon as possible. Next, I have Just Us: An American Conversation by Claudia Rankine. Claudia Rankine wrote the book Citizen, which was a fantastic piece of poetry and mixed media, and I've been very into just seeing what she puts out with next in terms of books, because she's worked on plays and other things along those lines, and I've definitely paid attention to sort of the essays and stuff like that have come out in different publications. Citizen is just like an amazing piece of work. And so I feel like she just views the United States in this very critical way. And I mean critical as in like she's very attuned to what is happening in the world, and she's able to offer to this analysis that other people maybe are thinking or feeling but aren't able to like verbalize in this way. And from what I can tell, Just Us is also another compilation of mixed media, so it'll have poems and essays along with images and art. So yeah, this just seems like another really smart, thought-provoking book that I am very excited for. All right, next up I have Dear Justice by Nick Stone, and this is coming out on September 29th. This is a book that I will admit I wasn't excited for until this year because I didn't read Dear Martin until this year, but I love Dear Martin, and I like read it, and then I think a couple of weeks after Dear Justice was announced, or at least the release date for Dear Justice was announced, and I'm so excited that I just happened to time things that well. So Dear Justice, as you may have picked up, is a sequel to Dear Martin, if you weren't aware. And this is following Quan, who is the character that Justice visits in jail. And so it tells the story of his perspective. And I think the Dear Justice part is, you know, Quan writing letters to Justice while he's incarcerated about his life and what his situation is like. So yeah, super, super excited to read this one. I'm sure it'll be just as heartbreaking, if not more so, than Dear Martin. And finally, I have The Searcher by Tana French, which is coming out on October 6th. I am a huge Tana French fan. If anyone has been like watching these videos for a while or listens to the Read or Dead podcast, you're not at all surprised by this. Tana French is one of those mystery writers who comes out with books kind of on a schedule. And so there was a book like that's supposed to come out this year. I put supposed to in like air quotes there because, you know, 2020 and who knows. And so like it's not an official schedule, but like every 2 years she basically puts out a book. And so a bunch of us at Book Riot were basically like, is she going to come out with a book this year? There were no like announcements or anything like that. But then I remember a couple of months ago, someone like saw a listing on like a foreign book website, like a foreign Amazon or something like that had an October release date. And then it was officially announced like maybe a month ago that The Searcher was coming out. And so The Searcher is another standalone from Tana French, which I am excited for because The Witch Elm was so different from the Dublin Murder Squad books, and also like it's really great when mystery writers come out with standalone books because then those are good recommendations for people potentially. And so this one follows a retired American detective who moves to a small Irish village, and he gets pulled into a case there about a missing boy. And the police there and no one really seems to care so much about this case. And so this story is basically like figuring out obviously what happened to the boy, but also like what is actually going on in this village. So those are my 5 most anticipated books for the fall. Let me know down in the comments below if you are excited about any of these books as well, or if there are other books coming out this fall that you are excited about, because I'm sure there are plenty that I'm not aware of, because like I said at the beginning of this video, I'm really bad at paying attention to these things. So yeah, that's all I have for this week, and I will talk to you all next week. Bye.